Sarajevo, a former Olympic city, capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina, is one of the most genuinely cosmopolitan cities in the world. The population consists of a majority of Muslims, but also Croats, Serbs, Hungarians, Jews, and the children of mixed marriages. The people think of themselves primarily as Bosnians. This famous paper, run to this day by a Muslim, Croat, Serb, and Jew, reflects the ethnic and religious tolerance of the people. What greater proof can there be than this strange mixture of holy places standing so closely together? The mosque beside the key synagogue by the Orthodox Church. All these monuments have remained undamaged and respected by everyone, some since the Middle Ages. The Bosnians, seeing what had happened to Croatia and having no desire to be swallowed up in a greater Serbia, now called for their own independence. 65% of the population, including a great many Serbs, voted in favor. The country was promptly recognized as a sovereign state. Leader of the Bosnians, President Alija Izetbegovic, was totally unprepared for war, but having achieved national status, he knew that his country had the right under the United Nations Charter to protection from the great powers in the event of an invasion. He was perhaps a little naive in thinking that leading politicians abide by their agreements. But after all, they had gone to the rescue of Kuwait.
All the heavy weapons.
To uphold, they said, the principles of the Charter.
Missiles and so on.
And Kuwait was not even a democracy.
The control of UN.
The Federal Army lost no time in launching an attack on Sarajevo. With the weight of aerial bombardment, tanks, long-range missiles, landmines and mortar fire, they smashed their way into all parts of the country. Further propaganda blasted from Belgrade denounced every Muslim as an extremist intent on poisoning Europe with Islamic fundamentalism. To maintain the arms embargo, now that the republics were recognized as sovereign states, was a flagrant violation of Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which decrees that no nation may be deprived of the right of self-defense in the event of an armed invasion into its territory. A visit to Bosnia did nothing to shake Douglas Hurd's belief in Milosevic as the man with whom he could do business. President Clinton took a more realistic view of the situation.
The imposition of the arms embargo by the United Nations before actually this country was even recognized had the unintended consequence of giving the Serbs an insurmountable military advantage, which they have pressed with ruthless efficiency.
No government was more opposed to lifting the arms embargo than the British.
But it was far away from reality, because on one side you had heaps of arms. Everybody was talking about the fourth military power in Europe, and now you actually, by banning us to provide ourselves with arms, they actually approved of the Serbian aggression.
One of the commanders in there said to me, "This is the weapon that I have," and he showed me a pistol and one ammunition clip left. My opposite number on that side has got howitzers. But I think they're doing a pretty good job trying to hold a very difficult position.
What should we do to help them?
I think there is more that we can do to assist them. The question for us is quite simple. Are we prepared to allow the Muslim community in Bosnia-Herzegovina to be wiped out?
Surely our leaders must have known that their policies gave these volunteers for the defense of their own country little chance of survival.
And then they accuse us of being this and that. But, I mean, gentlemen, we must live.
The attitude of our Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, and of some other politicians was bizarre. They imposed sanctions on Serbia in sudden recognition, apparently, that they were the aggressors, yet they still refused to admit that the Croats and the Bosnians were the victims of aggression.
People were very confused, and when there was talk of war, they thought, oh, they're all as bad as each other. But of course that again is a monstrous lie. I mean, of course, in any war, there are terrible things committed on all sides. And I wouldn't say that there are no atrocities committed by Muslims. That would be manifestly absurd and patently untrue. But this war was in origin a war of aggression by Serbia, and the vast majority of the atrocities have been committed by Serbia.
They killed all peoples. Some peoples from the Serbian forces have something like a wire put on the neck and pull.
Some people supported Hitler in every country he conquered, so some of the Serbs living in Bosnia supported the idea of a greater Serbia. For the citizens of Sarajevo, it was almost more frightening having to contend with the snipers in their midst than with aerial bombardment. The secessionist Serbs found a leader in Radovan Karadzic. Though dependent upon fuel, food tanks and military guidance from Belgrade, he saw himself as something of a rival to Milosevic and no less keen on a greater Serbia.
You could take the city tomorrow, couldn't you?
Anytime. We could take it anytime.
The violence aroused public concern. Questions were asked. Why couldn't the war be stopped? What was the purpose of NATO? The Americans threatened airstrikes, and the bombing stopped, but it started again as soon as the threat was seen to be mere words. This is not, and never was, a civil war. It was mainly an upon unarmed civilians by a heavily armed military force. It was genocide.
As President Izetbegovic always insisted.
How is it possible that we should have allowed such sights as these to be seen again in this century?
I think it's been one of the most shameful episodes in Europe's contemporary history, because I think what has happened here is that Europe has betrayed an idea of itself. You know, that what you have is a government, the Bosnian government, that has claimed to wish to uphold European values, values of pluralism and tolerance and multi-ethnicity and so on. And against this government has been ranged a viciously nationalistic, racist and murderous, aggressive force. And what Europe has done, basically, is to enable that murderous, racist, aggressive force to have its way to a very large extent.